story. Here we are at chapter 100. And I want to thank you for being here. Whether you've been here from the beginning, read everything at once, or for some reason this being the first one you're reading. Every comment. Well, not every single one. I've had some pretty bad ones over the years. But all the jokes, comments, even some criticism, and replying and giving ideas have gotten me this far. Also sorry it too way too long for this. And now for the longest chapter I have ever wrote. The 100th one shot. Ochako hopped out of the car and onto the pavement of her home's driveway. She looked up at her new house, which was a two-story, 2 bedrooms, 1 kitchen, and 1 living room with 2 bathrooms as well as a storage room. Her room was upstairs. Most of the house was white, except for the roof which was completely black. Hey Ochako, grab your bag and head inside. Me and your mother will handle everything else, his father instructed as he opened the trunk of his car. Okay, Daddy. She reached back in the car and grabbed her bag before heading inside. As she looked around the empty house, she found the stairs and headed up to her room. It was the only place in the house that had anything in it. It had her bed, a dresser, and a nightstand next to her bed. Not much, but she would one day fill it up. She had a window that faced the house next to hers, which strangely allowed her to look in the room of the neighbor next door. It seemed to be filled with lots of hero merch. She looked out the window outside of the house's driveway to see a green-haired woman talking with her parents. She ignored it for now and placed her bag on her bed, taking her clothes out and hanging them on some coat hangers in her closet. Ochako. Her mother opened the door as she was hanging them. Yes, Ochako asked, finishing the last one. There's a boy next door about your age. Come outside and meet him. His mother instructed. Ochako followed her outside where the neighbor family was. And this is our daughter Ochako, Uraraka. Her mom introduced her to the mom. It's nice to meet you, dear. The woman smiled at Ochako, who gave a smile back to her. She noticed there was more green hair hidden behind the woman's legs. Izuku, come on, they want to meet you. The mother spoke softly to her child hidden behind her legs. The boy poked his head out from her legs. Ochako got a good look at him. He had his mother's green hair, freckles, and he seemed kinda plain to her. They looked into each other's eyes before Izuku retreated back behind the safety of his mother. Sorry, he's quite shy, I'm afraid. Come on, Izuku. Honey, what's wrong? The woman turned and got down to his height. Izuku looked red for a second before whispering something into his mother's ear. Ooh, hee hee. Inko laughed a bit before standing up. Is something wrong, Mrs. Midoriya? Ochako's mother asked as the dad came over holding a box. He's just shy. Inko walked up to Ochako's mother, leaving Izuku exposed to Ochako completely. He said that he thinks your daughter is cute, she whispered softly into the other's ear. Ah, I got you. You know, since Ochako is new here, this could be a great chance for her to make a friend. What do you think, sweetie? Her mother asked, but the dad stepped in before Inko could answer. Promoted stories. You'll also like Wavy-BNHA, one-shots. 50.1K 430. A collection of BNHA one-shots. Imagine smiley face. And GT, some head canons and preferences. 2 requests open. Fluff, angst, lime, crack and others. No smut. Sorry, ex-reader. ... Love strings check mark. BNHA ex-reader Onishots. 889K 17.3K. Drawing creds of Toga. Fire Acra Carrot. BNHA characters ex-reader. ... Request status. Closed forever. ... Mature language and content. Any innocent cinnamon rolls please Biawa. Midoriya Izuku. 16.8K 355. X-Reader one-shot stuff from my Tumblr Hierophix. Check out my other books too. If you want to read more of my stuff, go check out my Tumblr and Quat. Hierophix and Quat. You can. Green tea. Izuku one-shots. 82.8K 1.3K Hyacinth. And Quat. This book is filled with one-shots based off of deku. It could range from simple ships to deku bowl. Quote, Cloud. And Quat. Warning. This book contains sug. Rewriting GX. 852K 11.6K and Quat. You're just a girl who's worthless and Quat. And Quat. Leave me alone. And Quat. And Quat. Why can't you see that? You're beautiful. Your quirk. Your APPERANCE. Everything. And Quat. M. Reader ONESHOTS. 251K 5.8K. A bunch of male reader one-shots with your favorite anime characters because these are so hard to find. Lowercase intended. Requests currently closed. Dobby. 282K 5K. X-Reader stuff. Unless the parts have the same name. They are separate scenarios from each other, so mostly one-shots I guess. Check out my other books too. If you want. I don't know if that's a good idea, honey. We still need to move stuff in and they only just met, the dad said. Dear, they're only 6 years old. Nothing will happen. Besides, Ochako doesn't have any friends. This would be a good opportunity, the mom said, reassuring the father. I think that's a wonderful idea. Izuku, show her your room. I'll be out here talking with her parents. Inko instructed. Izuku nodded and he started to walk towards his house with Ochako following close behind. Izuku walked upstairs to his room, the same one where Ochako had seen from her own room at her house. It was definitely filled with hero merchandise, only now she could see most of it was All Might. Wow, Midoriya, your room is pretty cool. Ochako was amazed by how much hero stuff he had. Izuku was surprised to hear this. Do you really think so? He hadn't exactly had a good history with heroes the last 2 years, so many people made fun of him for wanting to be one. Yes, All Might is one of the coolest. She had a spark in her eyes. Who is your favorite hero? Izuku asked Gold. She hadn't said anything bad yet. The hero 13. She's really cool and she's like a astronaut. Yours is All Might. She figured that out easy. Pretty much. The kid seemed pretty quiet and really shy, more than Ochako expected him to be. She felt something else might be wrong. How about you show me some more of your hero stuff, Midoriya? Ochako suggested to try to cheer him up. He nodded and went to his closet and pulled out a few boxes of hero figurines. Wow, these look awesome. Let's put them together. Ochako picked one up and was about to open it before Izuku screamed. No. Izuku snatched it from her hands. Ochako held her hands in the same spot as if still holding the box and blinked twice with a still smile on her face. What's wrong? Ochako asked, shaking off the surprise snatch. Sorry, it's just, I like to keep some things in the box as collectibles. A lot of stuff have more value when not opened, you know. Izuku explained. He put the box on a table. Oh, sorry. So you want to sell them someday? She wasn't one to talk about money. Not exactly. It's hard to explain. But I guess we could do this one. He went back to his closet and brought out a figure of the Hero 13. He brought it to the floor and opened it up, spilling the contents onto the floor. Didn't you just say you wanted to keep some stuff as collectibles? Ochako asked, sitting down. Why, yeah. But I don't really mind for this one. And this can give us something to do. He grabbed the instructions and started to put it together. Ochako smiled at him and grabbed a piece of the figure and began to help him build the 13 figure. Luckily the instructions weren't too hard and they put it together in less than 2 minutes. Helps when there's only like 5 parts. Good job Midoriya. We put it together and it looks totally awesome. Ochako did a fist pump in the air. It does look pretty cool. Here, he pushed it towards her. Midoriya I couldn't. She shook her head. She couldn't accept something that was his and they both worked hard on it together. I insist. Besides I have a lot more anyway. Just consider it a gift, Izuku said getting on his knees. Ochako looked at it for a few seconds before grabbing it off the floor. All right, I'll take it as a token of a new friendship. She stood up off the floor with the figure in her hands. Friendship. Izuku remembered the last time he had a friend. It was a painful memory. Yeah, we live next to each other. We can see each other every day. So it makes sense to be friends. She smiled happily once again. Are you sure you want to be friends with a quirkless person? Izuku admitted to her that he was quirkless. Ochako dropped the figure but quickly touched it making it float. She quickly grabbed it and deactivated her quirk and placed a hand on her stomach, bending over in pain. Uraraka, are you all right? He gave her a pat on the back. I am fine. I'm not supposed to use my quirk. It makes me feel like throwing up but I didn't want to break the figure. She set it back down on the floor for now. But Izuku, quirkless. But the odds of that happening I know. He started to tear up. But it didn't matter what the odds are. It still happened. N. He started to cry, Ochako surprised by the amount, and he kept talking. I just wanted to be a hero. But then I found out I'm not getting a quirk. Then all my friends, even my best friend started to hate me. It's not fair. He fell to his knees and started to sob heavily on the floor. After a bit more crying he stood back up wiping his eyes. Now that you know, I understand if you don't want to be friends anymore. Izuku wiped more of his tears but regardless they still kept coming. Out of nowhere Ochako threw herself around him, giving him a surprise hug. Uraraka, why? He asked not understanding why she was hugging him after what he told her. I don't care if you're quirkless Midoriya, you're my friend. That's not going to change. Izuku never heard those words before. Everyone had cared a lot, though not in a good way. Are you sure about that? Izuku still didn't believe that someone actually didn't see him any different. You're nice enough to give me this, she pointed at the figure after letting him go. I'm not going to hate you for something that you have no control over. It's not like you asked to be quirkless. And we're friends now, so nothing is going to change that. Her words really cheered him up. Thanks Uraraka. He felt her words touch his heart. Knock knock. Inko poked her head in the door after knocking. Hey you two. Hope you're both having fun, Inko said. Yes mom. Izuku nodded at her. Sorry to ruin your fun, but Uraraka your mom wants you to go back home to finish packing. You're more than welcome to come over anytime as you please. And thank you for taking the time to be with my son. With that she closed the door. Ochako grabbed her figure and turned to Izuku. You can come over any time to my house. Though I don't really have a lot of stuff we could do. My family doesn't make a lot of money. Ochako could probably just have them play outside or something. Anything we can do is fine with me. Izuku would be glad to sit around talking with her. Alright, I'll see you later Midoriya. Ochako turned the doorknob to his room and left. Izuku looked at the now empty box sitting on the floor beside him and smiled. A friend, since it's summer, I wonder if me and Uraraka could go swimming. I probably won't wear my All Might swimming trunks though, even for a kid he was a real nerd. 2 months passed since then. Izuku and Ochako would often go over to the other's house and hang out. Whether it be watching TV about hero news, playing heroes, or even just chatting about heroes. Yes. They would do stuff other than heroes, but it was a good portion of it. And after those 2 months Izuku went back to his school. Ochako's parents registered her late due to the move and because of this she would be starting the day after. Wouldn't be much she would miss anyway. She was currently staring out the window waiting for Izuku to come back from his first day. Like she told him before, her family doesn't make a lot of money so she didn't have much to do, even less when Izuku wasn't around. After a few more minutes of waiting she saw the bus pulling up and the green-haired kid stepped off the bus. Midoriya, hey, she stopped calling for him when she saw several windows roll down and trash flung out, a good portion of it hitting him before the vehicle pulled away. Midoriya, are you alright? She was worried that he got hurt from the trash thrown at him. Izuku looked up at Ochako and she couldn't believe what she saw. His left eye was swollen all over, like he had been punched over and over again. He quickly ran into the house before she could say anything. She raced down the stairs, ignoring her parents who tried to see what was going on, and races over to his house but found the door locked. The doorbell wasn't working, so she banged hard on the door over and over until Inko opened it up. Uraraka, what's wrong? Inko asked, not knowing what happened to Izuku. Ochako didn't answer and instead raced past her and up the stairs. She had been so fast, she caught Izuku closing the door. Pushing it open, she found Izuku setting his bag down, making him jump in surprise. Midoriya, what happened to you? She walked up to him, getting a good look at his eye. It's nothing. He tired to play it off, but she wasn't going to have that. Your eye is swollen and you had trash being thrown at you. Ochako was really pissed off, but she didn't want to take it out on him. It's nothing serious. He kept trying to play it off, but when he looked at her he could see how angry she was and a bit scary, so that made him come clean. Ochako started to cry from seeing it. What's going on? Inko asked, opening the door slightly. She nearly passed out when she saw how beat up Izuku was and she had to lean against the wall to stay standing. Mrs. Midoriya, can you please get some ice? Ochako asked. Why, yes. She composed herself before going downstairs. Sit, Ochako commanded, and he sat on the bed, obeying like a dog would. She went to the bathroom nearby and grabbed a bandage before getting back. At the same time Izuku's mom got back with the ice pack. Thank you. Ochako took it from her and placed it gently against Izuku's eye. Hold it carefully. Izuku nodded and held it carefully on his eye. How did this happen, Izuku? Inko herself was filled with rage from seeing her son hurt. Quote. Kachan. Izuku decided it was best to not hide it anymore. Inko headed downstairs to make a very angry phone call. Who's Kachan? Ochako asked Izuku once Inko left and he moved the ice pack. A father. Old friend. He was one of my friends until everyone found out that I didn't have a quirk, and he instantly disliked me, Izuku explained as Ochako placed the bandage over his eye. Ochako shook her head in disgust from hearing how he was treated. I can see he's not the only one to do this. She picked off a tissue that rested on his shoulder from the kids that threw trash from the bus. Ochako was now definitely ready for school tomorrow more than ever. They didn't take the bus. Ochako felt that it would be better that way. Once they arrived at school, Ochako introduced herself to her class. Hello. My name is Ochako Uraraka. I recently moved here a few months ago and this is my first day. I like walks and cute things. My dream for the future is to become a pro hero. Hopefully we all get along. She introduced herself with basic info. Thank you, Uraraka. Please take a seat so we may begin. The teacher instructed and Ochako nodded and walked and sat down in the only desk available next to Izuku. Even if it wasn't the only one, she still would have picked it. Hey, Uraraka. Izuku was glad that was going to be in the same class with him. Hey, Midoriya. She smiled at him before a crumbled piece of paper landed in front of her. She wasn't sure which direction it came from, but she unfolded it anyway and read it. A very disappointed look on her face came quickly. It gave her a warning about Izuku, telling her to get away from him while she still could. And several other notes warning her of the same thing came from different directions. Some with not very nice words. At least what a kid her age would consider not nice. She picked them all up, walked over to the trash can, and dumped them in the trash before returning to her seat. This caused a lot of people to start whispering to one another as everyone was shocked by her actions. As any of these kids Kachan? Ochako asked Izuku as the teacher started to teach to the class. No, he's not in this class. He has blonde hair and always mad, speaking of which, his real name is Bakugo. Kachan is the nickname I called him when we were friends. It makes him really mad. I don't know where he currently is. He explained to her as several people were still surprised someone was willingly talking to him as they looked back in still surprise. Class went back to normal after that, though they would still get some looks every now and then. Soon Izuku and Ochako were sitting outside at lunch, mainly because nobody wanted to sit with Izuku and Ochako wasn't going to abandon him. What you got? Ochako asked as they had each carried a lunch tray. Some onigiri and a can of juice. He pulled out the can and set it on the ground as he held the onigiri in his right hand. Neat. I got some sushi and some lemon tea in a can. She set hers next to Izuku's can and they began to eat. And while eating, Izuku suddenly got a blast from behind, sending him fly to the ground several yards from the bench he was just on. Midoriya. Ochako shrieked out in complete shock. She quickly ran to his side as part of his clothes were now burned off. I am okay, he said with pain in his voice. Ochako looked back towards the bench to see a kid her age with blonde hair standing there with two other kids behind him on either side. Deku. My mom got very mad and took away my games for 2 months. All because you can't handle a little pain. The very loud kid yelled. Gee, that is Kachan. Izuku said, still feeling the pain. It's not Kachan, it's Bakugo. I am about to kill you for that. Bakugo looked extremely pissed. Leave him alone. Ochako stood in front of Izuku with her arms stretched out. Bakugo and the other kids looked at her for a few seconds before bursting out with laughter. Look at you, Deku. Not only do you not have a quirk and you can't defend yourself, but now you have a girl defending you. He started to laugh, which was really annoying. How pathetic, one of the other kids said. That's so hilarious, the other one said with snot coming down his nose. This started to tick Ochako off more as they laughed at Izuku. At least he doesn't need to gang up on one person. The fact that you need some lackeys and not to mention hit him from behind shows how much of a coward you truly are. Ochako clenched her fist as she said what needed to be said. This got Bakugo to stop laughing and turn his attention to her. What the hell did you just say to me? Bakugo slowly walked towards her with his quirk activated. Even though he was a kid, his quirk could still cause some damage to a person. Stop, Kachan. She has nothing to do with this. Izuku slowly picked himself up off the ground. Bakugo turned his neck back towards him. Shut up, Deku. Hiding behind your girlfriend. You know people are talking about you too. Everyone knows your quirk less. And because of that people aren't going to like round cheeks over here. From what I see, it would be better for her if you were to just die. You hear me, Deku? You should just die. Bam! A dent was made in the lunch tray after being used to smash Bakugo's head, causing him to fall down in the head, knocked out. Ochako stood over him with it in her hands. She turned her head towards the other kids who quickly ran away from seeing the terror in her eyes. She took a few deep breaths as she gave everything she had on that hit. You Uraraka, why you just hit Kachan? Izuku couldn't believe what Ochako just did. Even if Bakugo deserved it. Nobody talks that way to my friends. Ochako was glad she did that. Though she wasn't thrilled about the talk she was about to get. 1 hour later. Izuku swung his legs back and forth as he sat outside the principal's office. He wasn't worried about himself. He was scared Ochako would get arrested for assault. After a couple of more minutes, Ochako and her parents walked out of the office. Midoriya, come on. We'll take you home. Ochako's mom spoke softly to him. He got off the chair and followed them to their car. As they drove away, the car remained mostly quiet until Izuku asked Ochako a question. Are you in trouble? Izuku asked quietly so her parents wouldn't hear them. With my mom and dad. No, the school. Suspended for 1 week. I heard Bakugo gets away with it though. That just made her more angry. Yeah. That's how it's always been. Izuku felt guilty that she got into trouble. So what was up with that name he called you? I think he said Deku. Ochako asked him a question this time. He's called me that for years. He means that as a way of saying that I'm someone who can't achieve anything. It's not something I like, to be honest, he explained to her. Ochako looked at the roof. What? He hoped she wouldn't start calling him that. You know, when I hear that name, it kinda gives me a you can do it kind of feeling. Ochako meant that and wanted to cheer him up somehow. He saw her give off a smile. Even though most people would think that she was just joking and didn't mean that. But the look she gave off gave Izuku the know that she meant that. And if he hadn't known her for this long already, he'd probably blush all over his body. Deku was fine then, he said out of nowhere. But that kid has been bullying you with that name for years. That doesn't seem appropriate. She squinted her eyebrows. Well, you seem to like it and just gave it a better meaning. Plus, if Kachan heard you say it, he'd get mad. That last reason was more than enough for Ochako. Okay then, Deku it is. But only if you say my first name as well. Ochako figured they were close enough anyway. Deal. They shook hands to seal it. After a few more minutes of driving they arrived at Ochako's home. Izuku and his mom ate quietly at the table. They hadn't spoken much since her had arrived. Mom, am I in trouble? Izuku asked once he cleaned his plate of bell peppers. Is that why you ate your bell peppers? Inko laughed a bit at that. Note. Many kids in Japan hate bell peppers. I love them. Why, yeah. He admitted and looked at the ground. No, you're not in trouble, dear. I'm actually pretty happy how much you and Uraraka have gotten along, and she stood up for you as well. Do you have a crush on her? Inko asked with a grin. Izuku stuck his tongue out in disgust. Mom, that's gross and I'm too young for stuff like that. She's my best friend anyway. He got up and placed his plate in the sink to be washed later. You never know, sweetie. You know I met your dad when I was about your age. We didn't want anything like a relationship, but your father stood up for me, and then about 5 years later we did things like dates, hugs, kisses, and la 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 la. Izuku covered his ears as he ran to his room with his mom chuckling to herself. When he got there he saw Ochako was already in her room. At this time they would usually wave at each other and go to sleep. But this time Ochako had her window open. Izuku unlocked his window and slid it down. Is something wrong, Ochako? Izuku had to yell so she could hear him. Deku catch. She sent over a can on a string towards him using her quirk to float it over to him. Izuku quickly grabbed it and Ochako deactivated her quirk, making her body get upset. Ochako, are you alright? He asked, worried for his friend. Why yeah, I'm fine. Luckily that can has almost no weight, so I'm just feeling a little bit upset. Anyway, speak through the can. She yelled back at him. Izuku looked at the can in his hand and spoke. Hello, he called out. He then placed his ear to it. Deku. Can you hear me? I can hear you. She said back to him. I can hear you. This is pretty cool, he said with a smile. Now we can talk even at night. Ochako smiled and she got onto her bed. So did you see the news about All Night last night? Izuku asked as he settled into his own as well. Oh come on Deku. We always talk about All Might. How about we talk about someone different like 13? Ochako suggested. Okay sure. Izuku agreed. He loved heroes in general, so he was okay with talking about another. And so they talked happily and learned about each other for the night. Bakugo didn't bother Izuku again as Bakugo had to take a week off to have his head recover. Not from the tray, from the hit he received from his mom when she found out what he did. And when Ochako came back she happily defended Izuku, and he even returned the favor by hitting a kid, with one of his hero notebooks, who tried to steal some yen from her. They always had each other's backs. You know you should probably take a break now, eat a cookie, drink some lemonade, meditate, whatever, because we still have quite a bit to go. 1.5 years later. Izuku threw his bag against the door and ran over to his window to wait for Ochako for their usual talk after school. Things had been going really well between the two and they managed to talk every day together after school. But this time something was weird. Ochako hadn't shown up yet. Izuku looked at the clock and it was already 5 minutes late. Then another 5 minutes. Then another. And pretty soon she was almost a half hour late. She has never been this late, Izuku thought as he looked across into her room. Just then he watched as her door opened and said girl appeared. With tears pouring down her eyes. Izuku quickly picked up his can. Ochako, why are you crying? Izuku asked, worried about his friend. Ochako walked over, opened her glass door, and picked up her can while wiping her tears off her face. Sorry I was late, Deku. She apologized for being late. It's fine, but what happened? Did someone hurt you? Izuku wasn't going to be happy for whoever made her cry. No, nobody physically hurt me. It's my parents. Ochako kept wiping her eyes as she couldn't stop the crying. Your parents? What do you mean? Izuku asked, confused. They haven't been getting much work lately, and Daddy says that we have to move. Ochako didn't dare look him in the eyes as she spoke. She slid down against her bed. The can fell out of Izuku's hand and made a clank sound as it fell in the ground. Moving. Izuku's hand twitched a bit as his eyes were almost soulless. Tears started to fall from his eyes now. We are moving to the complete other side of Japan. My mom and dad think they can find more work there. She explained over the phone. Ochako. Hang on 1 second. Izuku put the can down and grabbed some stuff. Ochako waited a few minutes before starting to wonder what he was doing. Deku. She looked over at the door to see Izuku with a clothes hanger ready. He nailed part of his string from the can into the wall. Ochako do the same, Izuku shouted from across. Ochako went downstairs to get a hammer and a nail and did the same thing on her side. He used the hanger to himself over to her. Luckily he was still a young kid so he didn't weigh much and he made it over. Deku, are you okay? She asked as he landed in her room. He looked up at her with his eyes full of tears and immediately pulled her into a hug. Ochako broke down even more than before, and she started to cry even more as she held onto him. I don't want to go, Deku. I want to stay here with you. She cried into his shoulder. I know, I don't want you to go either. He also cried into her shoulder as well. After a bit more of crying and hugging they sat down on her bed. They mostly stayed quiet. The only sound was the trees shaking gently outside from a small gust of wind. Ochako looked up at Izuku whose eyes were red. She was sure her eyes was the same way, not that she really cared how she looked at the moment. Are you going to forget about me? Izuku asked, breaking the silence. Forget you? Of course not. I could never forget about you. You've made me very happy ever since we met. She was surprised by his question. I remember what Kachan said once. That because you were around me, nobody else wanted to be with you. Quote. Those words were burned into his memory. And it was true. Nobody wanted to be around Izuku or Ochako. Okay, and I didn't want to be friends with anyone who treated you like trash. Quote. Ochako couldn't really care less about anyone at the school aside from Izuku. You know I can't even become a hero. Now I can't even have friends. Izuku brought his face into his knees. Says who? Ochako said. I don't have a quirk, remember. Izuku looked up a bit. Deku, you're one of the kindest, dedicated, and most observant people in the world. And not to mention that I've seen some heroes have almost useless quirks become heroes. You just have to work harder than others. Her words started to cheer him up a bit. Do you really think that I can be a hero, Ochako? Izuku asked. She gave a thumbs up. Of course, Deku. Let's make a promise. She hopped off of the bed. What promise is that? Izuku asked her. That the next time we meet, we'll both be at least on our way to be amazing heroes. And then we can become a hero duo. She stuck her hand out to him. Izuku smiled and shook her hand, making it a promise. The next day Ochako pushed her last bag into the car. This is really goodbye, huh? Izuku watched as she closed the door. Just for now, we will meet up again someday. I'll write to you every day, I swear. Ochako went and made another promise. And I'll respond to you as soon as possible. Quote. Izuku also made another promise. Ochako, sweetie, it's time to go, her mother said from the passenger side. Yes, Mom. Goodbye, Deku. I'll miss you. She nearly made both of them fall by giving him one last hug. Goodbye, Ochako. I'll miss you too. Izuku gave her hug a return. After a few seconds they let go of each other and Ochako got into the car. Izuku watched as they pulled away, giving one last wave to Ochako who waved back. I'm sorry, Izuku. Inko placed a hand on his shoulder as he began to cry the most he ever has in his life. Ochako looked out the window, watching all the buildings going by as they drove. She reached into her bag and pulled out the hero figure they had made nearly 2 years ago. Her tears quietly splashed on it many years past then. They wrote to each other for as long as they could, but eventually time and the distance began to slow them down until they stopped altogether. Mom, I'm leaving. Izuku quickly threw his red shoes on. Honey, please be careful. And remember, even if you don't make it, I'm still proud of you. His mother watched him put his shoes on. Thank you, Mom. I'll be back soon. He opened the door and ran out and headed towards the testing sites. I won't fail. All Might is counting on me. And her. Hopefully she still thinks about me, he thought as his grin went away for a few seconds as he headed towards the site. Meanwhile, Ochako grabbed her phone from her bedside drawer and started to walk out. She smiled at the old hero figure on her way out and she started to head towards the testing site. Deku, it's been so long. I don't even know if you're even still in this city. Heck, I barely even remember what you look like. She thought as she walked towards the site, eventually reaching the UA test site for young hero wannabes. As she walked towards the entrance, she noticed some blondish kid who looked angry walk by a green kid. He reminds me about that Bakugo jerk. I figured he's probably in jail though. She smiled at the thought of it. Although strangely, the green-haired kid seemed even more familiar. Is that Deku? I remember green hair. She slowly started to walk towards him when he took a step forward and he began to fall. Oh no. She reached out for him. And that's the one shot. 5,911 words. That is the longest, and will be the longest, one shot I will ever write for anything. Let that sink in. So thank you again for reading this, and the others if you did those too. And again, really sorry for the wait. Also know this isn't the final one shot. But I can honestly say, there's only 5 left, at most. But now I can update the rest, so look forward to that in the rest of the one shots and let me know what you think, and also follow me if you already aren't. Thank you.